I'm going to stop this whole thing there, which means you need to speak in the set going to it.
Mine doesn't go like yours. Okay, this better?
You're listening to What We Tell the Kids, a family podcast.
Hi guys, and welcome back to another podcast episode. Episode, 4 I think it is, to What We Tell the Kids. My beautiful wife, ladies and gentlemen, Roxanne Singh.
Hello, Roxy.
Roxy Singh, of course.
Yes, we forgot to tell you how sick we all were. And we were all trying to recover from some horrible flu. Just after we made the episode 3, we all just got into this flu season haddock.
What?
In our house, and it was terrible. So
Haddock. Haddock is a type of fish.
Yes. So it's a fun joke.
Havoc. Well, it caused a lot of havoc within our house.
It did.
And I'm happy that we're all feeling better, and that's the main thing. And we're back with the podcast episodes. So we're shooting this in real time for everyone. So what's our topic for today, my love?
All right. So I did a few asks out to a few people that I know that have kids and that have families and that are really having a bit of a hassle with parenting in 2025. And I asked them for some suggestions, and the hottest topic that wants or needs to be spoken of is dating in 2025.
That's the birds and the bees.
Wow, I can hear the birds. Surprisingly, dating in this day and age.
Especially if you're a father of girls, right? And that's a different story altogether. For boys, I don't know why parents show a lot more leniency. We try to control them, but we realize that they veer off quite quickly. With girls, we want to have a more stronger hand on things, mostly because there's so much more love between a father and a daughter. It's a relationship that somehow, and I don't know what the science is behind it, but it feels like a union and a bond that should not be broken. Not by any other man that thinks you worthy of my daughter. So if you're watching this, then you've got to watch out for me.
Oh my goodness. But anyway, I actually had a conversation with an aunt of mine, and she's got 2 daughters, and she obviously her daughters are now quite much older, but from what I believe and what I've heard, dating is different in their homes. Dating was different when I was growing up in my home, and now that we have kids of our own and we have girls of our own, I think dating is going to be very different when it finally hits the Singh household. And if I look at the 3 different types of generations, the dating generation, we're in for some trouble, I think.
But let's look at the controversy behind it. And the simple mathematics is that a father raises his girls. You have your kids that are well-cultured, mannered, disciplined, and form part of your household. To have a man, and I'm specifying this very closely towards dads and daughters, you have this time in your child's life where you allow them to start getting their hearts broken is number 1, because I don't recall many relationships, especially among my peers, where your first relationship was the one you took with you throughout your life till death do you part. So parents have to deal with the heartbreak. Parents have to deal with the culture behind now introducing a new family member into the equation. And the unfortunate reality is that it takes a lot of effort to have to now show face and save face and be happy with every new man that walks through the door. You wish that it were like the old days, probably like, arranged marriage, and you find the boy for your daughter or your son, or you find the girl for your son, and that's that.
Yeah, I think you know what the problem is with the kids these days. I think there's no longer a standard that is acceptable. Well, no kind of standard. When we were growing up, and I remember very clearly, it was, you had this defined set of defined standard that you would put your significant potential partner to stand up against, because that is what was acceptable to your parents. So for example, he had to be working, he had to have a stable job, he had to have come from a good family, he had to have a good set of morals and values, and those are things that we obviously we want for our kids anyway. But if you look at the kids these days, that's not a conversation that happens anymore, because you don't have a say in your kid's life anymore. Your kid will tell you that
not really
love.
True.
No, I know, I know what you mean, but in their heads, love is the main thing. As long as they love me and as long as they treat me well, and yeah, that comes too. But it never happened that way back in the day.
So I think the simple answer to it is, if you teach your children that being educated and successful is the primary means of living a good life, before they even have the ideology of bringing in boys, it would be a great thing to consider, so that when they find a useless man, it's either they are so rich that they can take care of him and he can be the bum that sits at home, or alternatively they reject all useless men in general.
No, but that's the thing. When they come of age, right? We're only speaking of girls that are ready to be dating. I'm not talking about teenagers. I'm not talking about the little kids that are going around in school having boyfriends. I'm talking about girls that are obviously finished matric and that are pursuing a path of career or whatever. These are the types of girls we're talking about. I think that from the conversations I've heard around the circle of people that are around that age, nowadays it is more that they're looking for love and the love element than stability from employment point of view, because the girls are established in their ways anyway. I don't need a man to bring me a salary anymore. I need a man to give me love. That's what I'm saying is what they're looking for.
I hope that in conjunction with it, because it works hand in hand, that if you are looking for love, you are successful. That's the great question that I want to put forth there. Because if the children of this generation are looking for love and that's what they're pursuing, they must have some form of success to their name. It's simple. Do you have your diploma done? Are you passing high school well? Have you already completed your bachelor's degree? Do you have a stable job? Stop seeking love if you don't have the practicalities dialed down. You see, love with no money means that you're poor in love.
Correct. However, it comes from your mouth to God's ears, because kids really they don't hear that part.
I think that the way in which I phrased it may sound harsh, because money is not the source of all happiness, but it is important for a simple word called sustenance. And you want to sustain your life, and you want it to be molded in a way that keeps your love nurtured and happy. We all want to be able to afford good things that keep us going, and it's false to give hope to children, like all movies and so on, that love can be achieved without factoring success in career and money.
I agree, and I think also a lot of, and I speak personally with when it comes to certain religious societies, they also pressurize a lot of these young people, and they pressurize them into the whole you must date this one guy, and you must stick it out, because you don't know this guy will eventually, or I'm speaking from the girl's point of view, right? This guy will eventually get a job and he'll get his life right, and and if you stick around for the hard times, and when he's finally sailing and he's doing well and he's got all these things worked out, you're a part of that success. What I call bullshit. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. And if you are the problem in my daughter's life, then divorce, if it be on the cards, it's going to happen, and I'm going to make sure of it that I support that decision through. However, having said that, I am not manifesting the idea that it is an option. I'm saying that the likelihood of us as parents wanting more for our children in terms of educating them, we need to educate them to be successful. We need to educate them about how divorce shouldn't be your first priority, because it's not a get out of a relationship quick card that you just pull. There's a lot of law behind it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of logistics. And surprisingly so, now if you caught cheating in a marriage,
Yeah, I've heard
you
about
could be
that.
arrested. I haven't.
You can be sued.
I can be arrested and put in jail. And I haven't fact checked it, but it'll be good to dig in onto that. And
Yeah.
cheating is a big problem. However, to any boy that may be listening to this, and I'm not directing it at anyone specific, I promise you, but in the future, forgive me. To any future boy, if you come into my household, you need to add value to my daughter's life.
Correct.
You have nothing to prove to me. You have nothing to prove to mum. There is no trying to bribe my daughter's siblings in order to show that you're a good person. You just need to be a great individual to her. Love
Yeah.
her, respect her, and don't give her a reason to want to
Course.
divorce you. And we also need to look at it from the flip side of things, that not always, and here's the controversy, not always is it the boy or the girl's problem that's dating our children. Sometimes it can be our children that are the problem.
Yeah, agreed. And that is where I also quite agree with you. I think we need to, every parent needs to bring up good children with good values and good morals. Because if we all can do that, then there won't be the whole idea of, I'm not sure what kind of family they come from or which type of family they're going to, whatever. Because you know, if we all can just understand that bringing up your kids with good morals and values, that is the key. Yes is yes, no is no. Always be truthful. You love everything that you have. You always love unconditionally is the word. And I promise you, relationships would be so much better for it if people would just learn how to love unconditionally. You know, if you love someone unconditionally, you want to protect them and you want to provide for them and you want to be their all and everything. And that is where relationships fail, is when one of the person or in that relationship fails to be or to put in the work. That is the problem. But if you work hard and if you both from the get-go are working towards the same goal, there shouldn't be divorce. There shouldn't be end of relationships. It just can't be a one-sided affair for the rest of your life. That's not how relationships work.
I think it should be a staple rule within the country and the universe that if you are uneducated, you should not date. If you don't have a stable job, you should not date. I mean this in no offense, but look, it's discovering your love for a person starts with all the courting phase and so on and so forth, and then you start to establish likes and interests and so on and so forth, and then you need to establish goals and success stories and all of those stuff, and you plan these elaborate futures. But how dare you plan an elaborate future when you're parking with a higher certificate pass on your metric certificate and you have no future? Now that's my point. And that's what I want to say. And people may take offense to it, but you need to learn how to work hard in life so that you can succeed in working hard in a relationship. Because let me tell you, dating and marriage is no joke. So if you bring nothing to the table, then don't come to the table at all.
Yeah, agreed. I completely agree. We just asked our 19-year-old the same question. How would you tell mom and dad if you were in a relationship? She says, I won't even bother because I'm not ready to date. You know, the best part of your adult life is discovering who you are as a person. You can't share your life with somebody if you don't know who you are. And that is the biggest problem with these youngsters that date before they are ready, is that they're so fixated on sharing somebody else's limelight that they don't see that they have their own and they need to discover themselves.
They are fixated on the what you call it. I'm trying to discover all the scientific words. The dopamine, the infatuation, flatulence. Flatulence is farting, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. But I think you sort of understand where I am in my headspace with this. They are so caught up within the moment that the moment is all they care about. The emotions that they feel is tied to love. love up until somebody cheats, and then now you're sitting with a heartbroken teenager that's crying and sobbing. And all of these are part of life's learning curve and lessons. However, it is also important to stabilize the environment that you raise your kids in. So start making a few ground rules. See, this is how it works in our home. Be a contributor to have some contribution given to you within your life. Whatever sort of attachment you want to draw yourself towards, like a magnet, make sure that the other side has something to pull on towards.
Yeah. So another interesting topic that came up in the suggestion box, if you want to call it that, is how would we feel if our child, obviously we have one 19-year-old, right? Almost 19-year-old. And if she had told us that she was in or found somebody when she's ready, obviously within the same timelines that is acceptable to us in our family, and if she had told us, Dad, I met somebody, however,
Talk about the timelines quickly. Sorry to interrupt you there,
Okay,
but
yeah.
just to give you an example what the timeline
All right,
is
so
like.
we've established a timeline in our home. We've said to our children that you are ready to date when you can say, I can afford to date. When you can take your said partner out on a date, pay for it, drive your own car to the date, and go home afterwards to your own home with your date.
I put my parents through a lot of hell going through my teenage years, through my early adult life. There were many people involved. There were many occasions where I was bluffed into love. There were many emotions which I felt. Driving my dad's car, now stealing it, going out and doing all of these things.
Sneaking out the house.
Just trying to build these relationships, forgetting my career path, even wanting to be a nuisance to it became a point where you eventually as a child become a burden to your parents because you were so confused and you're jumping around and you're trying to find this stability. That chaos is healthy because it grew people up like ourselves, where we have eventually found love and stable relationships, but it comes at a cost of making too many severe mistakes. So nip it in the bud and try and form some discipline. Discipline will encourage good behavior, and look, when they are successful, even if they are tiny bit successful and they are out the door and doing what they have to, good luck to them.
Yeah, and
they can make all the mistakes they want from there.
We've said in the timeline in our house, it's simple. When you're on your own, by all means, date, don't date, do whatever you want to do. But as long as you live under this roof, there is no space for other intentions. There cannot be more than one man filling this house. Yeah.
You're sleeping under my roof, you have to follow my rules.
Yeah,
End of story.
We're not, and yes, I agree, it probably comes across very harsh, and it's like we don't give our kids the ability to have freedom. They have freedom. However, when it comes to relationships and involving and including and subjecting us to other people in our lives, in our home, in our space, I have a say in it. I'm not just going to allow anybody into our space, into our safe space, if I don't believe that person has my kid's best interest. Because in our house, our kids' best interests are a priority. So if someone else is invited into our space, then that person has to take our kids' best interest at heart too. And a relationship is involving us and subjecting us as a family to include and love somebody else. And I don't think that we as a family unit can be ready when our child is still a teenager.
I personally agree with that, and I also want to say that there is a difference for parents allowing boys and girls. If your child's a boy or a girl or whatever it is, there's a difference between allowing the opposite sex to be friends in your home and inviting them over. I've had plenty of them here within my home, but they come as friends and they leave as friends. Simple as that. And when you bring that stable boy into my life, and this is directed specifically to my daughter, make sure that you see a lot of long-term potential with this significant other of yours, so that when I invest my time, my effort and my money into his or her needs, firm believer that as you get older in life, you want to preserve as much of your time as you can, so that you do things that are meaningful and not wasting your time away.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. What was the second point that you wanted to talk about? Love?
The second one was so diverse dating. The question came across that what would you do if your kid came into the house and said, "Dad, I met somebody. We're serious about it. We've been talking for a while, and he is not of the same culture or not of the same religion."
Look, I'm open to it because in all truthfulness, as I've mentioned in the first episode of What We Tell the Kids, in that podcast I did mention that my wife is Christian, my kids are as well, and I am Hindu. So it is diversity, and there's difference within our household in terms of who we are. Now, let's explain this difference in a little bit more detail. My prayer form may be different to your prayer form. It doesn't mean we aren't praying to the same God. Everyone can have their own objective opinion on this, but it is that's how I see it, right? In terms of the way in which we interact, the way in which we love, the way in which we speak with each other, it's normal. I mean, we all human, we Indian humans, so I don't look at you differently just because you're Christian. I don't look at you differently just because you're Muslim.
The thing comes into play is what kind of how do you handle religion, or how do they handle religion in their home? In our home, you look, and I'm going to quote the Bible. The Bible is clear in its teaching. You are responsible for your own salvation. You are responsible for your own end of life. You decide where and how for yourself. You are not taking anybody with you. You are not your perception or your religion or whatever the case is does not define someone else's. Your belief is yours. Your salvation, your own. It's you, and you stand for yourself, by yourself. Nobody takes somebody else to heaven or whatever the case is, right? So obviously, as for your children, you got to teach them, and eventually they make up their own mind.
You know, there's a beautiful saying in Hinduism, and it's something that we grew up learning. All paths lead to the same God. But how he said it was beautiful. He said, as many faiths, so many paths. So he believed that just as rivers flow from different directions but merge into the same ocean, all genuine spiritual paths, by that he meant Hinduism, Christianity, Islam, etc., or others, lead to the same divine reality. Now, if you want to have diversity, you need to have somewhat of a mindset like this. And the reason I say somewhat is because every spiritual book is different. To a Christian, that would be untrue. To a Muslim, that would be untrue. To a Hindu, it's more of a multicultural embrace, depending on which sect of Hinduism you do follow, which makes it a little bit more stricter. In my opinion, that if you want to date in terms of diversity, it's not restricted, it's not condoned, it's not frowned upon. It's something, it's a combination of two hearts and souls, and you have to be willing to give and take as well. And you should never be forceful in the way in which you approach your partner's culture and their religion. And you should also learn to give each other the reasonable amount of space that's required.
I agree. I think that in a relationship, you have to create boundaries, but you also need to remember that boundaries doesn't define support. And we as individuals, when we bring ourselves in our family, to our family unit, I need to be able to teach my children that it's okay to love somebody that's outside of their race, religion, culture. Oh, I said it again. Whatever diverse difference there is in who and how they were brought up, it's okay. The main thing is to remember that you create boundaries for yourself, and if your significant other loves you back, they will respect that boundary, and also they will learn to integrate that into your relationship. And that is the biggest part. I think that's where people fail to remember and understand how relationships work. Relationship is a 50% work in. It is not 100% one person, 90 or 10, no 0% or 90%, 10%. It is 50%. We pray together as a family. It doesn't mean that I pray and he prays. We pray together. He can still close his eyes and pray while I'm praying. We acknowledge that there is God, irrespective of who he believes in. It is God that we pray to. And it is also very important to remember that in our home, we have to always bring our kids up knowing that they have to have spiritual encounters in their life. You can't live this life on earth not having God in your life. It's impossible to navigate this world without God. And I'm sorry it's turned into this topic, but a relationship, a foundation is built on spiritual elements, on emotional elements, on trust, on all of these things. God should be the center of that relationship and it will work out. So religion depends on the person. Culture depends on the person. If they are willing to compromise, great. If there's no compromise, walk out, run, move, run away as fast as you can, because there's no compromise in your relationship, then you're in trouble.
Yes. I also would like to say, and I'm going to throw it out there, and if you're offended by this, I apologize, but the only people that have a problem with diverse relationships are people that are insecure in your own religion.
Correct.
So you better go back and you better introspect and you better see just how powerful your God is, and you need to admit to a certain degree that you have a problem. It's a you problem. It's not everybody's problem. So if it offends you and you don't like it and it's not for you, it's not for your culture, it's not your cup of tea, it's just not for you. But it doesn't mean that you should disrespect it and disrespect other people's views on it and how they love, because there are so many beautiful multicultural and happy marriages out there that are built with people from different religions. Not so much in Islam, of course, and we understand the dynamic behind that, but in Hindu and Christian homes where it's a combination, we live a beautifully happy life.
Extremely happy, guys.
If you come and tell me that Jesus Christ is Lord, I will say amen to that, because he is. And I believe it with all my heart and soul. No BS. I do. And it's how I was taught to believe growing up. So this is one for mom and dad. And thank you for educating me about Hinduism and spirituality through the way in which we learned it, that shows us that there is nothing wrong with any other religion in the universe, and also loving people from those religions.
And I have to add to that, my love. I have to add to that and just say that, when it comes to mom and dad, that your mom and dad, right? I refer to them as mom and dad. And when I think of them and I think of how they love, irrespective, I know the generation they come from isn't as open to that generation that they come from, they weren't very open to the differences of culture and race and sex and same sex and all of that. But I must take my hat off to, and I must do this to my in-laws, but I call them mom and dad. The way they love, irrespective of who and where and how you come. It's an amazing kind of love that I wish and I pray that I can be like one day. And I pray and I wish and I hope that my children can be that way one day. Because yes, we teach our children to the way we were taught, but we also give them the opportunity to love and to be loved in the way that they feel is best for them. And it's something I've never seen with the generation of theirs before. They are the first that I've seen. And I must say that I hope to and aspire to be half as patient and loving and kind and understanding as they are. Because me and the way I am now, I'm so set in my ways sometimes, like the way we are parenting. I don't think that we have that kind of patience and love, but they have the love and patience that just amazes me. When I walked into your home with my issues, mom and dad were my strength, and they were there for me as my parents. It's not usual to see that in an Indian family. It's not usual.
You know, the world will be a much more beautiful place to live in when people start practicing the religion of humanity first.
Yes.
When you start to actually interpret things like love thy neighbor in the literal sense, that irrespective of who that neighbor is, you are going to show
Correct.
the deepest amount of affection and love for that person just because they are God's creation. The world will be a much more kinder place. But before we move on from this topic, I just want to put it out there that to my daughter, the only thing I cannot afford to pay is Labola. So if that's something that you want to bring into our home, there's no cows or whatever coming from me.
Let me just tell you, Labola is now being negotiated differently. Hey, you can even open a bank account and take a loan out
No,
now.
thank you. No, thank you.
But let
I
me
don't
just-
need debt for your marriage. I need happiness. And I need peace, not problems.
Let me just close with one thing just out there for those that are listening that are probably judging and hating me right now. Philippians 2:12 says, "Therefore, my friends," and it goes on to say, "continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling," your own salvation, right? So you alone are responsible for your own salvation, what you believe in, where you're going to, how you act and behave in this world. You and yourself only responsible. I'm not responsible for my husband or my children or anyone else that comes along. I'm responsible for myself. So I hope that my kids hear that and remember that when they walk into their relationships, and I hope they take it into their lives and remember their decisions, their choices, their own. They live with it. They make their bed, like my dad used to say, you lie in it.
What would this world be if we were so restricted to just love who we want to love? It would be such a sad place to live in, and for many cultures it is a sad place to live in.
is.
Trust me when I tell you that for being a temple boy, when I enter into a church, I still feel the spirituality, I still feel the love. There's so much of motivation, there's so much of bliss, there's so much of God, there's so much of peace, there's so much of music, and there's sometimes a bit of dance as well, which is unusual for me, or was unusual for me. But hey, if I find God there, God is everywhere, and that to me is something so beautiful. Stop disappointing the world because of religious views, or stop limiting beliefs just because of it's happening again. It always happens on this podcast where I start something, I lose my train of thought because the image in my head is more beautiful than the words that I want to speak. But yeah, I think you get the point, guys, and I'm not going to pick on it too much.
Yeah, and stop blackmailing your kids, man. You know, parents must stop blackmailing their kids. Just support them, teach them what's right, and believe that what you teach them, they will take into their relationships, and they will believe and they'll love and they'll continue to be good human beings without having to blackmail them to do what you want them to do.
Very, very. But I will blackmail my children if they are not educated, as I said. That's a very important thing. And look, I've always given the example that if we lived anywhere else in the world and we were earning the great US dollar, or we were earning the great British pound, or whatever the case was, and we had such successful careers that we were billionaires and millionaires, then maybe your stupidity wouldn't be seen as a curse. It would be seen as, he's a billionaire's kid. So yeah, it's normal. They're all like that. But in retrospect, we live in South Africa, and in South Africa you need a decent education to succeed so you can get yourself rich. So yeah, that's the only thing I blackmail my kids into, is being highly educated, and that's all I wish for them, so that they can make those proper decisions and they can be decisive in their actions.
So bottom line now, no teenage dating. We don't do teenage dating. We do dating when you're ready being the timelines that we've given. And definitely our kids are and will always be opened and allowed to have relationships that they feel are best for them. We will be supportive of it. We will welcome and love the person that they bring into our home, to join our family,
I won't
because
love them.
they will be a part of this family, and they will be loved and cherished, and they will be an effective part of this home. Even though he disagrees, I promise you, he probably stays.
Nobody can make my daughters happy.
But yes, we say that now. But at the end of the day, we as parents, we want to make sure that when we add to this family, we add another son. And then eventually we add a daughter. So our kids are just going to grow and bring more kids, which is excellent, because I wanted a huge house full of feet. I've always wanted that. But yeah, so that is the bottom line.
No boys allowed.
We tell the kids no girls allowed.
Well, when it's time for my son to bring a girl home, that's like me inheriting another daughter. I don't think I'll be too angry about that.
You see how biased you are, dads?
Biased, hypocrite, whatever you want to say. It is what it is. It is what it is. So yeah. Thank you so much for tuning in. This podcast was filled with a lot more controversy, a lot more insight, and we hope you enjoyed it. We love you lots. Bye.
Bye-bye.